Hey guys, welcome to Learn to RV, the podcast. This is episode 32. Can you even believe it? I can't. We are brought to you today by RV Roofing Solutions, and I am Tasha, flying solo, but this episode's a little different. We are a little busy over here at Learn to RV, the podcast. What are we doing? We're getting ready for the 2026 Florida RV Supershow. Maybe you guys have heard of it. It's a little thing happening in Tampa this next week. And Jennifer and I are running around like chickens with no heads. We have big things in store for this week and just a lot of things ahead of us that are going to result in some big things for you guys, our audience at home or on the road, really. So what we decided to do was to tap all the way back into our archives to episode 14. For those of you who might not have listened to it or had an opportunity to hear it, yes, this is a fan favorite. This is From Fear to Freedom. It is all about kind of shaking off those jitters and getting on the road, and why now is the best time to jump in and take to the road if that's what your heart desires. Lots of things in store this week, but what it does mean is that you guys are getting blessed with a re-listen. Yay! So buckle up, tune in. Episode 14 is on its way to you right now. I hope you guys enjoy.
Welcome to the Learn to RV podcast, where we support, inspire, and empower you 1 mile at a time.
Today, we are going to be talking about From Fear to Freedom, saying yes to full-time RV life, and how to face your anxieties with hitting the road full-time. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer and Tasha, and my name is Jenn. And we've all been on roads a little bit of different time. Tasha's been on the road the shortest, so I'm going to start with her because she remembers what it was like starting RVing a lot fresher than the rest of us. But Tasha, can you tell us a little bit about what your emotions were kind of the weeks leading up? Not after you took off, but just the weeks leading up to preparing to leave. Can you tell us about that time period?
Yes, I can definitely do that. So we made things more complicated than they probably needed to be. Technically, we had two launches. We had the launch that was moving out of our sticks and bricks into the RV, and that one felt so hectic, and I honestly couldn't feel nervous about it because I just had this to-do list that just kept getting longer. We had rented the house that we were in, and we had been in it for 9 years. And so we had 9 years of accumulated stuff that we had to get rid of. And so it was like nonstop garage sales and nonstop take it to Goodwill or take it to this drop-off point. And so we had been doing that for months, just trying to get all of our ducks in a row, if you will. And so the weeks leading up to that final move was like, is everything clean? Is everything ready to hand off? Are we ready for that? For anyone who is new and hasn't heard the story, Rosewood, my oldest, had braces, and we thought they were going to come off by the time it was time to leave. And then they got extended. And they kept getting extended. So I say that we were being held hostage by the dentist. Like we were in dental jail and we could not actually hit the road when we wanted to. So that was another stressor, was that we thought we were going to hit the road, but we actually had to find a place locally that we could stay because we had to be near the dentist. And so when it was time to go, we were just so stinking excited. It was like, where are we going first? Because it felt like that life had been on pause. The other thing for us was that right before our first launch, Matt's employer had said originally, yeah, you can totally work full time. You can totally go on the road. We totally support that. And then they had a change at the higher level and said, no, if you want to keep your job, you have to come work here, have a butt in this chair on site, 60 hours a week or however long they wanted
that
him to be
changes
there.
things.
It does. So that was another thing, was that he was scrambling to find a new job to make it work. So I feel like we had a lot of the stresses that, or a lot of the anxieties that people are going to face no matter what. You have a to-do list that just keeps growing, and you're going to have that no matter what kind of transition you're making in life, whether you're moving to a new city, to a new house, changing rooms with a sibling,
Right.
any sort of move is going to have a to-do list. But we just, it's the Martin way. If it can happen, it'll happen. Um, and so it's just a little bit,
So how long
different.
how long would you say was between the point that you guys made the decision to go full time to when you
Mhm.
actually launched? How much time was in between that?
Which official launch? The first launch or the second
The
launch?
this Well, both. How much time was between, your decision and the first launch? And then how much
Mhm.
longer was it till you guys actually got released?
Okay, so it was March was when the first thing happened that made us start going, maybe we need to rethink our lives. And by midsummer, we had pretty well made up our mind. We had traded in for the truck a October. We had the camper by December.
It took a
So
long
Matt
time.
and I are nuts. It was like, here's 6 months. But also when Matt and I were like, let's talk about dating, 6 months later we were married. So I mean, that's like kind of general Matt and Tasha timeline. Let's do everything in 6 months. That's pretty standard for us. I really think that
Yeah.
it was like, we made the decision. We did about 6 months of research. Then we made our purchases. Then from the moment that we bought our truck and um, bought the trailer, because the other thing is that we had some trailers fall out underneath us from purchase. So that kind of extended that process a little bit. It was about 6 months from the time that we made those purchases until we were living in campgrounds, and then from there, it was about 6 months before we were out of Arkansas full-time, away from that kinda safety net of this is the place that we are familiar with. We did some on the road trips, in between those dental visits. We would go to Florida for, a month. We would go to North Carolina for a month and come back, but we kept going back for several weeks in between those. So we had, like,
Going to
legs of
dentist.
trips.
Yeah. And you've been on the road 2 years now?
A little over 2 years, yeah.
Okay. So I'll go next because I'm the next longest. We are coming up on 8 years. Actually, by the time this airs, we will have been on the road for 8 years. We got introduced to this lifestyle in the spring of 2016, I think. And at that point, it was like, okay, that is great, but there's no way we can make it work. We didn't have the careers to sustain us and travel around. My husband worked in the IT at a hospital. I did wedding photography, and it just didn't seem feasible. But the dream was there. And then later that summer, life unfolded in a way that allowed me to launch my business. And I dove into graphic design work, and it kind of exploded overnight during the month of July that summer. And by August, we were like, okay, we can do this. And we're like, let's just do it. We're gung ho. So we started doing all the research on rigs. We've never, by the way, had never camped a day together in our lives
Yeah.
before, but we're like, nope, we're diving in. So we started doing all the research we could on units and everything, secured our travel trailer and our 1-ton van. Would have been October and November, um, later that fall. And then we already had plans to go to Florida for the winter. So we had made those before we had an RV. So we just kept our arrangements. So we're like, okay, well, we've got our RV now, but my husband's still going to quit his job and we're going to just go to Florida. So we did that. When we came back, we decided maybe we need to take a quick trip in the RV and make sure we like this thing. So we took a quick trip of probably 2 or 3 weeks out west. went down to Arizona, and this is from Illinois. We're in Illinois at the time. We went all the way out to Arizona and up into Utah with my parents. So at least we weren't, trying this alone. And of course, no doubt we fell in love with the lifestyle. And so as soon as we came back, it was early April. And we're like, all right, let's do this. And that's when we started downsizing, getting rid, purging everything we
Wow.
could. Um, and let's see, we moved into our travel trailer in June, I believe it was. So from April to June, we had downsized, purged everything. I had left the furniture in place for showing of the house, but everything else was gone. Some of it ended up in my mother-in-law's basement because we weren't ready to part with it yet, and moved out in June and listed our house. And a week after we're in our travel trailer, because I didn't want to live in our house while we were listing and showing. I have 4 kids, little kids. I didn't want to deal with the kid messes in showing the house. A week after we moved into travel trailer, my husband flooded it. And so we moved right back out. And, but I was like, nope, we're not moving back into the house because again, we had just gotten rid of everything. So we moved in with family, which, oh my gosh, trailer goes off to get repaired. And it took a couple of months and insurance and all of that navigation. We got it back end of September. And so early October, we had our plans in line. We took off Columbus Day weekend of that October and never looked back. So it probably took us a full year from start to finish if you count the time, of researching the rig and everything. But
Yeah.
from the time period of when we were like, all right, let's do this, it was like April to June, we were technically in our trailer. And then we
Yeah.
just had the big bump in the road that we had to deal with. But all right, Jen, I gave you lots of time to remember what it was like and your emotions and feelings. And so tell us about what your weeks leading up to launching were like.
So it was just a decision. And I had gone to a youth conference to see a bunch of the girls that we had lived near in Oceanside. And I came home that night and I looked at Frank and said, "Hey, I think we're supposed to go full time." And he said, "I've been waiting 7 years for you to say that." And so the rest is kind of a whirlwind because the next morning he sold the big screen TV and we had a 1990s travel trailer purchased within a week. And that was nuts. And it wasn't the right fit. So we started revamping it. And God literally made a way for us to get a different camper. But it was still a small camper, but it was a better fit for what we needed. But I was sitting here thinking, as you guys were talking about how fast you got on the road, it was the weekend of May 6th because it was Frank's last weekend in college. And we were on the road by July 3rd, like officially.
Wow.
Wow.
So it is not how I tell people to do it today. We did have a nest egg. We did have, Frank's retirement. So we had income coming in. We rented the house. Not that we ever planned to go back. It was in a rent to own situation. It literally happened within 24 hours of us making that decision. And I had little people and I had an 18-year-old that looked at me and said, "Love you, mean it. See ya. Bye. I'm moving out." And she literally left the same weekend that we were supposed to, like Frank was finishing school. And it was a mess. And it was not how I tell people to do it today. Have a plan. I see so many people that go on the road without an income and think that they can make it without a decent nest egg. And when I say decent nest egg, I'm talking like a minimum of $10,000 in the bank, plus some credit cards that can give you some fallback. But without having some kind of income, one misstep can knock you flat on your face.
Absolutely.
And I mean, like we've had a lot of those things, but the whirlwind was, we had 3 weekends back to back where there were yard sales. And then we had a fourth weekend, which we called the blessing sale. And that was pay what you can and just leave us something in a jar. And we made $12 that day. And a lot of things went. And it was hard because like the kids bagged up their Legos into sets. And like somebody came through and grazed, meaning that they took just all the figures out of each bag. So when we went to go sell them on eBay the following week, we found out all the action figures were gone. So I mean, is there regret? No, actually for me, there was a sense of relief as I sold the stuff, which I didn't expect to have because there were some items that were like my childhood stuff that I thought, like I had this collection of dolls that when we hit the road that, my Barbies were gone. And I'm talking like Barbies in boxes, like
Yeah.
brand new, like, from like the 80s. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
older
We
than
had
both of
some of
these
those
guys.
too, and those are hard to get
But
rid
it's
of.
one of those things where it was very freeing in the beginning. Would I tell you to do it that way again? I don't know. Our first 90 days we did. We bought a van, we bought the other camper. We dove deep into our savings to do what we did, and we just trusted that God would make a way, and he did, but it wasn't easy. There were a lot of months we were eating beans and rice the last 3 weeks of the month because it's not cheap to travel. And I think people underestimate the cost out there as they're moving around. And so it's not just that. And now, like going out without a plan and without some kind of financial income, like, hey, I want to be an influencer. Yeah, you and everybody else. It doesn't happen overnight. And so, like, knowing that, just because you saw somebody go viral doesn't mean you're going to. And I think that that's also important to note. But yeah, I mean, like, it was under 90 days. It was under 60. I want to say it was under 60 days from the day that we made the decision to the day that we hit the road. And we traveled fast and crazy fast the first couple months. We did a lot of cheap or free stays wherever we could. And then Frank's mom got sick. And so we would end up having to drive to New York very quickly so that we could see her before she passed away that year. And then we stayed there for 6 weeks and made decisions based on that. And then we were not in an all season camper. So guess what? We had to leave. And so we had to go south and go south pretty quickly. And so that was when we figured out we could join Thousand Trails and have some, affordability to this lifestyle. And so we were almost 6 months in at that point. We'd been living in what I call vacation mode. And I can't imagine, and we all do. I think so many of us that get on the road do that. Like we start out,
Kind of
oh, I want to go
natural.
see this. I want to go see that. And what you don't realize is the free things to do are free things to do. And some of them are great. And some of
Yes.
them are just like meh. And,
But there's
you
also
know,
still the cost to get to those free
Free
things.
things.
well,
Yeah.
and the fact that you're going to do something that day. So now the kids are hungry. And so what are
Yep.
your choices going to be? Are you hitting the dollar menu at Taco Bell? Oh, wait, that's gone.
It takes a while to find your groove. I mean, I know it took us a while to find our groove and to get into the routine of, okay, we're going out adventuring today, so let's pack lunches, so we're not eating out and, learning how to transfer from vacation mode into, you know, living mode because this is just life, but it's life on the road. I mean, we did vacation mode too, like so many people, but I will say we first 3 or 4 months on the road, we actually did not move around because we wanted to just get used to living in our travel trailer. We headed straight for Florida when we left, and we went and sat in Florida at one campground. We just paid a monthly rate for that entire winter, and we just sat there for the winter just to get used to living in our RV, getting organized. I mean, heck, nothing was in place anyways because when we left Illinois, we literally shoved everything in and drove off. I didn't even take time to put things in the cabinets. I'm like, just get it in. We're out of here. So it took us a few weeks to just, find places for everything. How do we want it organized? And then once we left Florida, we went into vacation mode. We're like, okay, this is great now. Yeah, we're going to go and we're going to see and we're going to do all these things. But yeah, it's not sustainable. It probably took us maybe another 6 months, probably after that summer, we finally realized, all right, we got to slow down just a little bit to make it a little bit more sustainable. Did you do vacation mode too at first, Tasha, or were you smarter than the rest of us?
I don't think I'm ever smart about anything, Jen. We still slip into vacation mode when we get to a place where we're with friends. And Jennifer can tell you this because she was just at the same place with me. And I was like, let's go, let's do this, let's eat here. Um, I I like to have we'll go we have Thousand Trails and we use Thousand Trails. I mean, we use Thousand Trails. And so we have our package allows us to be at a park for 3 weeks. While we are there, we are not going and vacationing for 3 weeks. We will have like a weekend where we'll go out and explore, and that weekend will be that vacation mode where we go and we eat out where we want to eat out. And we go do the, museums that are maybe costlier or the tours or go see the things that we want to go see. Go to the baseball games at Fenway, go to, we've thrown the boxes of tea off the side of the Boston Tea Party. Like, I've done all the
Yeah.
things, in Boston that there is to do, and I am not ashamed of it. I'm okay with having that vacation time because what's the point of going to Boston if I'm not going to go be in Boston,
Right.
But
Right.
I think for us, it's about finding balance. So allowing ourselves to experience the places where we go and allowing ourselves to enjoy those moments and gift ourselves those moments without overindulging to a point where it harms us financially or makes this lifestyle unattainable or unlivable. So we will have that weekend where we go out and we do the things as a family, but we also will make like 10 pounds of crock pot chicken that we're eating off of for 2 weeks for dinner every night because,
Make
it
up for
was
that.
on sale at the grocery store and it, is getting ready to go bad. And so we got it for
Right.
like 20 cents a pound. So it's, you know, we're making those lifestyle choices that allow us to live both sides of the coin instead of having to choose one or the other. And that's really important to us in finding balance on the road.
I think that's a very good point too. Like you can do the things. It just means you got to substitute somewhere else just to stay
Yeah.
within your budget. So I want to take a minute and I want to talk about now like the feelings. And I know like Tasha, you were saying, before you launched, you didn't have time to really feel anything because of your to-do list. And I think we could probably all say that to an extent. We were all so busy just do that the feelings and the emotions weren't there. But for me, it was once we hit the road, like my emotions evolved so much. On one hand, I was super excited. And then there was a part of me that was like, are we really doing this? Is this really happening? Let me pinch myself. Is this real? Like, no way this is real. And then there was another part of me that actually freaked out. Like, I was having some serious anxiety over my kids and like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, the CPS is going to track us down because my kids are not in school or we're not doing the annual doctor's appointments or, we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And I'm like, this can't be legal. Like, someone, I was just driving and waiting for the sirens to go on behind me or something, because they were after us, and it took me a couple of years to probably get over that actually. The fear of somebody doing or saying something just because like our kids weren't in school during the school year. And, now it's like, my kids are homeschooled, whatever, it's all good. But back then, like the anxiety was real. And
Yeah.
I will say like this much, if you guys are listening or watching this right now, then you're probably ahead of the game from me because you're making an effort to learn these things and you're making an effort to build your community, which was probably my biggest mistake is that we went 2 years without building our community and that didn't help my anxiety at all. Jen, why don't you go next on this one and tell us what were your emotions like once you guys hit the road?
So, I mean, they were all over the place. We left one kid in California, and so that wasn't easy. And she moved in with friends. And so there was a huge transition that happened probably long before it would have if we'd stayed in the house. But we were a military family. So moving around wasn't really weird for us. We just went from moving every 2 years to every 2 weeks. And so it was a different dynamic. Those first few months were, I wasn't, I mean, I came from California. So, I mean, I wasn't worried. I was a homeschool mom that ran homeschool groups for years. My oldest was 18 and graduated. So I'd been the homeschool mom that had, a preschooler already. And so having other kids with me didn't scare me as much until we met other families years later and CPS was called on them. So your fears were valid, but that has to do with your domicile state. That has to do with knowing the laws in your domicile state. So that's why we chose Texas. And it took us 2 years to change it. We stayed in California for a long time. And, the way we looked at it was if we didn't stay anywhere 30 days, then we didn't fall under those laws. A lot of people will tell you, oh, well, it's not like that. It technically is in every state. If you're in a state for 30 days or more, you
Yes,
actually would fall under that state's homeschool laws. And you can go to
technically.
hslda.org and go look that up. I promise you that's what you're going to find out there. I've been doing this a long time, but I also knew that parental rights didn't exist by then. And so parentalrights.org started many, many years ago. And so in California, I had friends that had their kids taken away because they didn't want to keep it was complicated. Let's just say that. And so it's not true in every state, but
Right.
California had already given me a slice of what I didn't want for my family. And so the plan was to go out, see the world for about 2 to 3 years and find a place to settle down. Well, we're in year 13 and that hasn't happened yet. So, we have graduated kids and moved them out. So, but I think
Launch them into the real world, as people would say.
right.
Yes.
And I think that, a lot of people today, go into this thinking, there's several different trains of thought, right? There's the people that buy a camper and they're building their house. And so that's a fine way to do it. But you have to understand you're going to be giving up community for that unless you're plugged into a local homeschool co-op or your kids are going to public school wherever you are. I know people that work camp and put their kids in public school all over the country and flip from one location to the other every 6 months. And I would say that's probably pretty hard on your kids. I feel like the way we did it, we're very intentional about community. And so our first full time families rally was in 2014. So it was just under a year from when we launched, probably 8 months in. And it was expensive. Rallies are not cheap things. But if you want to connect quickly, it is one of the easiest ways to find a community.
It
And
really
so
is.
there weren't all these free communities out there back then. And so we joined full-time families literally the month of December, did not buy gifts. And we went out and we bought $150 lifetime membership with full-time families. And we were one of the first 50 families and full-time families. My number's 36. But it was important to us because we were promised all sorts of things within full-time families back then. Now full-time families has changed hands and those promises changed with new ownership because businesses, that's just kind of how those work.
Yeah.
And so it is what it is. And, there's different ways out of it now. We can't go to a rally for $25 for our family. But looking back, that was an unrealistic number, long term. No one could have afforded that, not even any business. And so we look at that and go, well, there's some, truth in all of that now. But that being said, it is what we were promised. So, communities are harder to get connected and sometimes they feel clicky. And I feel like we felt that our first winter, even though there were at the most 13 families at Thousand Trails Orlando, I feel like you can feel like you're left out in the cold. So you have to be willing to step in the ring again and again and again. And I tell people this one all the time. My kids have been on the road a long time now, and they've seen a lot of people come and go. I mean, the average family lasts 18 to 24 months out here. And usually there's a huge surge at your fourth year on the road where a lot of the people you met and traveled with will go off the road. And every
Yeah.
4 years, there's a whole nother surge of those people. And so we're into the third surge of those people at this point in our travels. So my kids are more reluctant to get to know your kids the first time around because
Right.
they know in 2 years they're going to be gone, or that's how it feels like it could be. And so I tell people the first time is not the magic number. It's the second and the third meeting when you and your kids start going, oh, I'm going to see this person again, that they're willing to make that investment. But that means as parents, you have to make those choices to make that happen. And that's true whether you have kids with you or you don't. If you're not investing those friendships that you made years ago, they're just going to fade. It's just the way it is. If we're not right in front of people, a lot of times we're just forgetful.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I can't really say that I'm good friends with anybody from our sticks and bricks days. Life went on for them and I wasn't a part of it anymore. They have their normal routines and, we moved away and we're moving all over the country all the time. And,
Well, and
it's,
we circled back a year later and we found out that we had changed. We didn't
yeah.
know that that was the equation initially, but we didn't fit there anymore either. And so I feel like we had changed. And so not only did our community change, we were the ones changing. We had a bigger worldview. We had a bigger idea of where we were, who we were, and people thought we were crazy. They still do, but that's okay.
Yeah. What about you, Tasha? What were your emotions like once you hit the road full time?
We hit the road, and our first bit of hitting the road was a lot of back-to-back rallies, if I'm being really honest. It was a lot of we had prepared with back-to-back events and had kind of prepaid for those and pre-scheduled those, so we knew exactly where we were going. So I have to say that hitting the road for us full-time, like really being on the road and not just bouncing back and forth between the road and Arkansas was maybe easier because of that. Because, first of all, we were surrounded in an environment that constantly encouraged building community. So there was never an opportunity to be like, oh, I'm just going to sit in this camper by myself and regret what I've done. It was, there's this other icebreaker event that I'm going to go to where I'm going to meet new people. There's another, coffee and donuts with moms event that I'm going to go sit at and talk to parents who are learning how to road school their kids. So we had this really valuable on-roading, if you will, of people who whether they were part timers or full timers, they all were very welcoming and they helped us find our footing. And so, where I think, like, I hear a lot of people talk about that initial anxiety or um, kind of like second guessing of what they've done, we really didn't feel that. We felt reassured that we had done a good thing for us and for our family. And one of my one of my best friends, Nikki, she has constantly said, like, I'm just so glad that you have found a family on the road, because I'm always going back to her with stories of, we went to this thing and we went here, we did this, we gave with these people, we ate with these people, whatever. And so it means something to me that the closest people to me pre on the road see that as well. It's not just me delusionally telling myself, no, I made the good choice,
Well,
being
and
able to say,
even
no, like, I
that,
see this
like
in your life.
even that though, like our kids, we just went out to dinner last weekend and we found this really great little Italian restaurant. And with a kid that has gluten issues, it's a really big deal to find an Italian restaurant that caters to gluten-free people. But I'm not the only one out of this equation that has a kid with gluten-free issues. So Theo, who is my 18-year-old, sometimes referred to as Gus because it's the same person, it's just a nickname. Anyway, they went out and David was with us, and David is Tasha's 17-year-old. And they have similar problems with gluten. They actually got to try desserts together that they got to share. And
Sweet.
it was, but what was really neat was to see, because David didn't want to come to go play. And
He's right over there.
I think we actually think he had a really good time. And so those things are part of it, you know.
RV Roofing Solutions is a nationwide RV roofing company with mobile installers.
One of the biggest factors and benefits of the RV Roofing Solutions system is our product is a low VOC, which is helpful for those who are sensitive to chemicals. It's better for the environment, and it actually works better for the RV roofing industry.
It's a great place to find a quality product.
www.rvroofingsolutions.com.
But yeah, I mean, like all those things. But I wanted to circle back just for a second. I know Jenn came on the road with a decent job, and Tasha came on the road with her and Matt having work. But I want to talk about all the couples that maybe don't do that. So we came on the road with just Frank's enlisted retirement. And that is not a lot of money to live off of. And yes, we came on the road with healthcare. And yes, we came on the road with things that other people don't always come on the road with. But there's a lot of anxiety that's circled around just the finances on the road. And so if you lose a tire, you should replace two, just because the next one's going to fail pretty quickly. A lot of times, if you have a leak, a roof isn't a cheap thing to replace. All the things that most people don't even think of, that'll never happen to me, is usually what you hear. But one blowout can be the difference between making it and not making it. So our first year on the road, we were at the Full Time Families Road School Rally, which was our first rally. and we met the owner of a company, and my husband, being the Marine that he is, walked up and said, "Well, you need me, I don't need you." And the owner looked at him and went, "Okay, thanks, we're done here." And about 20 minutes, he circled back and he said, "Okay, Frank, I want to know why you'd say something like that. And if you know Frank, you know he's not like that. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He's just that kind of guy." And he said, "Look, I'm a retired Marine. I own this camper. I own this tow vehicle. We have an insurance payment, and pretty much everything else is gravy and we can just travel. I just want to make some money so that we can have some fun." And so finding that job that had some kind of, more substantial income became an extra for us, not a necessity, but it was something important. And so when we were given the opportunity to own RV Roofing Solutions back in 2020, that's one of the reasons we took it, because we helped guys for years find their way to make some extra money. And we don't pay peanuts for the company. So we partner with RV roofing technicians across the country. But, not everybody can be an RV roofing tech. There's some, pretty distinct skill sets that go with that. But finding a work camping job, work camping jobs don't always pay the bills. And Jen knows that better than everybody in this group, because you use it to supplement your income, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yep. And finances is a big part. I wanted to talk about that anyway, so I'm glad you circled back to it, because I think a lot of people, like, this is where a lot of people fail in their first year, is by not being prepared financially for the road ahead, so to speak. Just having a good understanding, and and you had mentioned earlier having at least $10,000 in the savings account, and I agree with that. I mean, if you can get more, that's even better. But you should not be hitting the road with anything less than that, because things happen, as Tasha can probably attest to. And not everybody's story is different. We went through our first few years without really having outside of the flooding incident, technically before we officially launched. We didn't really have any other issues with our travel trailer. We were really lucky in that. And there are people who are lucky. So don't think that just because you hear the bad things, that's all that ever happens, because it's not. There are stories out there. You just don't usually hear them. Things can go well, but you know what? I'd rather have $10,000 sitting in my savings account and still be there 2 years from there, because I didn't need it, than to have nothing and be going, "Oh, no, like, what are we going to do now that something's happened and we didn't have the money to cover it or something." And along those same lines, I feel like if you're going to make full timing work, it requires a certain mindset, and I'm sure Jennifer can agree with this. And Tasha, I feel like you've done this enough too, because you've gone through enough hurdles in your RVing career that you'd say the same thing. But I think you have to have a whatever it takes mindset. Like, when
Yeah.
something happens, you don't turn into "Oh no, woe is me. Like, the world is falling apart." No, it's just, okay, let's put on our big girl pants and let's be adults and let's go, all right, how do we solve this problem? What are all the solutions? And let me tell you, there's always more than one way to solve every single problem that you will encounter traveling on the road. But
Yeah.
what solution is best for you? Is it you fixing the problem? Is it you hiring a mobile tech to fix the problem? Is it you going to a, RV manufacturer to fix the problem, or getting on YouTube and doing a lot of research? I mean,
Well, and
there's a lot
and
of
being
ways.
and being willing to pivot. Like, it
Yes.
means that sometimes, I just read today on Facebook somewhere, this guy had a tangle with something and took out a portion of his rig, and he's got a hole in the side of his rig right now. And he's like, "I
Yeah.
don't want to stop my travel plans for this. How can I fix it?" And I'm thinking,
You have
well, sometimes you just have to stop. Sometimes you have to put things on hold and go do what you have to do, and then come back in. And yes, it's inconvenient. And yes, it's, different. But sometimes those bumps in the road put us somewhere we wouldn't expect to be for a season. And
Absolutely.
sometimes taking a work camping job. So we've done work camping seasonally to fill our bank account back up. And, we'll take that season and, spend 5 months in one location and just deep dive in that area and just make the best of it. Is it what we wanted to do at the time? Not always, but some people think that you can live off of, work camping job to work camping job, and you can if you have no bills. And, I think that
No
people have
kids.
successfully done it, but using that as a supplement is oftentimes a better choice than using that as your only income. And I think that that's where people get the struggle comes in for them.
I think a lot of people think that RV life is going to be cheaper than a
Yes,
house.
100%. And I
It's
think it
really not
can
the
be,
case.
but I think
It
it can
can be.
be.
It
But
it
that
really
means,
depends on
but
how you structure your budget and your life.
well, and are you putting a $10,000 solar setup on it so you can go boondock in the desert 6 months of the year? Like, and I think you give and take for that. I think that
Yeah.
that definitely changes
Well, and how
how
long does
you
it
do
take to
this.
pay for itself? And I just put a blog out recently and we'll tag it in the show notes, but I just went through an RV budget and what things look like financially and how much money you really need, to go full time. And it's got a lot of really useful information like that, solar system and how much money you put into a solar system and how long does that take for that solar system to pay for itself? Because it will save you money, but it might take you a year and a half before it actually starts. You start seeing, the reaping of what you sowed. Tasha, what do you have to say to some of that?
Well, I think you guys were talking. I was sitting here just reaping in all of the good wisdom, but you were talking about the things that you need and the types of behaviors or personality traits that you need to
Mentality.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really made me think, you were talking about putting on your big girl pants. Like you do need a certain level of grit, but I think that there's also a huge level of humbleness that is required if you're going to make this really work for you and work in a
Yeah.
way that is not going to put you in the cardiac ICU.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able and willing to accept help from your
Yes.
neighbors, from strangers. You
It's true.
you have to be willing to learn. If you are not willing to do those things, this lifestyle is going to be very miserable for you. If you are a person who always has to be right, if you are a person who cannot accept help from another person, if you're a person who refuses to step outside of their comfort zone, stretch a little bit, you're going to have some heart tremors. You're going to have some anxiety. Your blood pressure's going to run high. You're going to, you know, that's a huge part of this life. I think sometimes I feel like I spend more humility than I do dollars on my repairs. Because it's a lot of me saying, I'm pretty sure this is my fault. I don't know how or why. I would love to learn. But I need help. I need to know what to do to make it better and to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if you're not a person who can do that, then
You will struggle.
first maybe ask
Well,
yourself why and work on that. And then second, ask yourself how you feel about maybe stretching that part of yourself to make that work better for this life.
Well, and I think there's things you can't factor in, like there's things that you just don't know till you find out. So like
Yeah,
grocery budgets are different in all over the United States. Restaurant prices are different all over the United States. I remember this
they
summer.
absolutely are.
So, I mean, a guilty pleasure is McDonald's on a travel day. And so my daughter can eat a cheeseburger there as long as it doesn't have a bun. And so she usually would order like 3 ranch to go with her cheeseburger because that's just who she is. And so when they stopped being 35 cents a packet for ranch dressing, she was all excited. And you think, okay, 35 cents is not a lot of money, but add it up over the course of a month. If you eat out twice because you have 2 different travel days, and now
Right.
ranch is 35 cents a packet and you're doing that for 6 kids, that's a big difference if you now don't have to pay for that. Fuel
Yeah.
costs from one side of the country to the other are very different. And so, like in Texas, diesel might not be bad. But, if you're going, I don't know, Pennsylvania has been pretty pricey, but California is far worse. Cost of eggs across the country varies greatly.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are things that you just don't think about till you're out there doing it. And so now you're not planning for that budget of $6 a dozen eggs, But, that is part of the equation. So one of the things that we have done is we get a Costco membership because Costco is pretty consistent across the country and it's decent
Yes.
quality products and you can buy a little bit of bulk. And so all of those things add up in terms of helping you price things out easily. Does the chicken cost more at Costco? Sure. But I mean, it's better quality chicken and it lasts longer. So for us, it makes sense. So
And
you
you
have
can
to make decisions.
order from Costco too. So we are in Rapid City, South Dakota for the summer. There's no Costco here. The closest one's 5 hours away, but we do place monthly orders with Costco. Now we can't get fresh foods from there, unfortunately, but we can get some of our staples like our organic peanut butter or the avocado mayo or trash bags or paper towels, or different things like that that is cheaper from there than most other places and it ships for free. So Tasha, what did you want to add on to that?
I wanted to add that, with thinking of Theo and those limitations on eating, if your family has someone with food allergies, another thing that you really have to keep in mind is those food items have some of the greatest fluctuations in not just availability
Yes.
across the country, but price.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we were in a town about a month ago and I could not find any of the products that David can eat in terms of dairy substitution or deli meat substitution, anything like that. The town before that, it was like heaven. I mean, I walked into the grocery store and it was everywhere and it was priced the same as the everyday sliced cheddar. I mean, it was like perfect. But we went from one town earlier this year where his dairy substitution sliced cheese that I get for his lunches was $4.85 for an 8-pack slice. We went to our next campsite, and in that town, it was over $9 for the same product. So,
Almost.
yeah,
There's no
when you
consistency, and that's one of the
there's no
challenges.
so the other thing is when you have something that maybe you need often, um, it's good to have some sort of a way to stock up on that and keep it on hand. So, like some of David's breads that he can have, if I can get those, sometimes I will put them in the freezer. Or, if they're just things like that, where if we have room for it to store it somewhere and it's on sale, you better believe I will be getting extra of it because, if it's on sale and it's
Well,
available.
I know a lot of people that will order off Amazon. I tell people, so I worked 3 seasons at Amazon through Camper Force. And I will tell you, Amazon does not specify their food items from their regular items. The way Amazon is organized is not safe for food consumption. I actually
Mhm.
saw open like like gluten-free flour sitting next to like a container of peanuts and one had been broken open. And so you never know what kind of contaminants are there. And a lot of times it's not food that's sitting there, it's bleach or cleaners on the same exact shelf. And so
Oh, wow.
if
Oh,
you want to
that
save
sucks.
by ordering off of Amazon, know that your food items should not probably be coming from there because they're not the same. They don't have the same regulations inside any facility. So
Right.
just to
Or
keep
make
that
sure
in
you're
mind.
ordering something that is sealed and
But
don't
even
do
the sealed
flour from
stuff
there,
can be
but
sitting right next to something that's not. And so
true.
I had lots of friends and have over the years that have allergies and have had reactions as they get their Amazon orders and don't know why. And I can
Oh,
tell you, you
yeah.
have to be careful of all of those things. So it's not
Yeah.
about necessarily what you ordered, it's really about what was sitting on the shelf next to it.
Next to it, especially if you've got a lot of allergies and stuff. Yeah, I can see that.
And
Okay, so
also, sorry, I've
go ahead.
got one more thing on groceries.
No, go
That's
ahead.
a big topic for us.
It is. Well, everybody needs groceries.
Before you move to your next site, like I know that I know a lot of people who are like, before we move, we like to have like our kitchen emptied. We like for our refrigerator to be empty. We don't want to bulk up because we like our camper to be as empty, as light as possible.
Yeah.
I get that. I am not that family.
Fill it up.
Okay. My family is the family that's like, but what is available where we're going? This is the question at
Right.
hand. So, if you know where you're going, my big suggestion to you is per chance, check to see what grocery stores are going to be around you, what availability you've got around you for shopping at your next location before you leave where you are. We had a spot that we were going. We had never been there before. And Jennifer was the one who said, "We've been there. It's 45 minutes to the first store. So make sure that you get your groceries before you go because that's
Yeah.
45 minutes with no traffic. And once traffic is in there, it's even longer." And I was like, "Oh, okay, get my milk before I leave." So things like that. And even where we are right now, the closest grocery store, and we're talking like a mom and pop, very small grocery store, is a half-hour drive from where we are. And then it's almost an hour to next town that has like Walmart
Real
and TJ
stores.
Maxx and, Costco and all of the places.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to make that big drive, make sure that you plan ahead by just looking and seeing what's there and even what do they show that they have stocked on their shelves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, we tend to stock up before we go because we don't know what they'll carry. I mean, you might have a Safeway here and a Safeway there, but the Safeway there is going to carry different things than the
Yeah,
Safeway here.
absolutely.
It's a different region, but it's funny.
Or
You
Walmart's
talked
going to
about
be cleaned out because, there's so many snowbirds in the area that you're going to go. If
Yeah.
you're not there at 8 o'clock in the
Well-
morning, guess what? You're not getting milk today.
We have
So-
2 Walmarts in Rapid City, and they both carry extreme opposite things. Like, one's always out of stock, but then the other one has it in stock. But I was laughing because you were talking about a 45-minute drive to groceries. Well, heck, we've been living like that for years now. Between being at Yellowstone and here at Custer, like groceries are 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half. We're in heaven when we're in a town and we only have to go 10 minutes to a grocery store. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We're so used to the opposite. But so I want to go around and I just want everyone to just kind of come up with one thing. Like, what is your one piece of advice if you could tell someone who's having anxiety or fearing or worrying about hitting the road full time? What is your one piece of golden advice that you want to tell them? Jennifer, I'll let you go first since you're the wisest of all of us.
So my advice is almost always the same on this. Get connected. There is community, and without it, it's a really hard line. And sometimes that community is because I've had friends have their rigs catch on fire and needed a meal train, and the community will come together and bring money together so they can get home or to their next stop or something, especially when their rig was totaled. But community is so much more than that. It's having people to go walking with in the winters, people to have campfires with, and kids for community to play. It's all those things. And I would tell you every bump in the road is that it's a bump. And if you want this lifestyle, you can grab it, but you need the people along for the ride with you. And those people will come and go, but you just have to keep stepping back in. I mean, you guys weren't part of my first part of this equation. Some of you were years later. And it's my ability to just keep stepping back in and saying, "Hey, come on, come play with us." That brings that community back together. And I think that for me, that's what's kept us on the road for so long, for sure.
Tasha, what would your golden advice be?
My golden advice is going to sound negative. So I need you to like put on your happy ears and listen for the happy grain of joy that's in it, okay? If you are looking at this as a solution because you feel like your family is falling apart, I hear ya. My family was not in a great place when we stepped into this. Matt and I felt like we had, really grown apart. We would all go into our 4 corners of the house. We just felt like there was a lot of distance between us. We really could have gone one of 2 ways when we started this. And I think it's really only because we liked each other when we did spend time together that it went as well as it did. But I've seen it go other ways. So I just want to say, if you and your family fight like cats and dogs inside of your 2,500 square foot home, because you can't be far enough away from each other, that's not going to get better inside a 35-foot travel trailer. My
With
advice
thinner
is,
walls.
yeah,
your neighbors
where
will hear.
everyone can hear you. My advice is be realistic about who you are. Be realistic about what you need to be happy, to live a life that is fulfilling to you and that is fulfilling to your entire family. If you're going out and you are a solo traveler, you're responsible for yourself as one person and you are making a decision that's for you. If you're going out there with a crew, you can't just think about what you want. You need to think about how this will affect each member of your family and really have conversations together. I talk about how we sat down and had a conversation together and everybody was on board. We're not always on board, all four of us together every day. The other day, David was like, when do I get a house again? It's a, like sometimes it's just 3 of 4. Sometimes I'm happy we've got 75% of us still in the game. But you've got to be willing to have those conversations. You've got to be willing to talk to each other. And if that's something that is not working and it's not something that you can fix, it's not going to get better in a teeny tiny little space. That tin can is just going to implode. So really, my biggest piece of advice is be realistic. Really look at what you need, what your family needs, what your loved ones need, and don't chase something that looks shiny because someone on YouTube
Just
said
made it.
that it's shiny. Chase it because it feels right for your family. Chase it because it's a dream that your family has and it's something that you guys want to do together.
Agreed. Very, very good advice. And my advice would be that wherever you're at in starting your journey, whether you're trying to decide whether to do this or you've made the decision and you're working on making it happen or whatever the case may be, like take your decisions and your to-do list and divvy it up into bite-sized chunks and focus on one thing at a time. Don't try to tackle 5 things at once. If you need to solve how you're going to make money on the road, go and solve that problem. Go and study that. Go listen to we have another podcast out there called Working While Wandering. We have a whole page on our website, Learn to RV, that talks about how to make money on the road. Go and learn everything you can about that one thing before you move on to the next. Because once you start doing 3 or 4 or 5 things like all of us women like to do because all women are multitaskers, you get overwhelmed very quickly and then you accomplish nothing. So take it in bite-sized chunks, one thing at a time. If you're at the process of buying an RV, just focus on that. Focus on buying an RV and figuring out what you need for that RV, or focus on selling your house, or focus on what you're going to do for homeschooling and what that's going to look like for you. Again, we've got all sorts of resources out there about homeschooling on the road schooling. We've talked about it in other episodes and blogs and everything else. And the other thing I'll say is,
And
like,
there's
a lot of
groups.
times,
There's groups that you can hop into. Learn
Yeah.
to RV, the friendly informative group, is a group for you to ask,
Yes.
come ask those questions. And, one
Yep.
of the rules in that is you do have to be kind. So, and if
Yes.
you're not kind, you will be put on post approval. But there is
You'll get
also road schooling resources. And so road schooling resources, my heart mission, and this is all what it comes down to, is the fact that people should be able to have access to this information for free. So there are those
Yes.
of us out there that will come in and help you, whether or not you buy a membership, because there's no membership to that. And so we think that that's just as important. And so, to just benefit Jen's point, those places, even if your kids aren't connecting there, it gives you a chance to connect. Ask the questions, have real people answer them. There's no trolls. And if the trolls exist, we kick them out because they aren't there. You have to have a real profile with a real profile picture. And one of the reasons we ask the questions we do before you get into those groups is to make sure that you are a real person, because there are families here that are traveling together. There are solos in some of these groups. There are couples that don't want to share their location just for safety reasons. We want you to feel
Yeah.
safe in all of the groups that we run.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I was going to talk about too, is go online and ask. But I see so many people hop in those groups and they will post a question like, we're getting ready to launch. Tell me everything
Yeah.
I need to know.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Ask your specific question and focus on that and let people speak into that or share their experiences on that. And then once you've solved that question, then go ahead and post again. There's no limit to how many times you can post. Post 100 times in a month if you want to, but don't go out there and just say, tell me everything, because you'll get a hodgepodge of answers and it probably won't help you at all. But I do just want to kind of wrap up with saying, the one thing I will say is, we've seen people come and go on the road. And a lot of times there are people that get off after 6 months, and it's sometimes because they realize that this life's not for them. And this life is not for everybody. It's a great life. I love it. It is for us. Jennifer loves it. It is for them. Tasha loves it. It is for her. You'll see a lot of other people that love it. It is not for
him.
It's not for everybody. And that's okay too. Maybe you will be a weekender and that's the best you can do. Maybe, you'll do summer trips when your kids are out of school, and that's okay too. There's a lot of different ways to do the RV life. This isn't just about full-timers. This is just about getting out and doing what's best for you and your family as a whole. Thank you for joining us this week. We are really glad to have you here, and be sure to go on and like and subscribe, leave us a review, drop a comment. If you have questions, hit up our groups, Learn to RV, the friendly, informative group, or even the Learn to RV, the podcast group. That's out there as well. Stop by, say hi, and, we can chat further. See you again next week.
Leave us a review.